The chains were cold. Not the kind of cold that made your skin shiver, but the kind that seeped into your bones and whispered that you would never be warm again. They'd put them on me the moment I stepped off the shuttle. A dozen alien guards, with armor like molten obsidian, their eyes like polished black pearls. The air smelled of rust and brine, a stench that clung to the back of my throat as they marched me down the corridor. The arena gates loomed ahead, 100 meters high, reinforced with some metal I didn't recognize, each seam glowing faintly with embedded circuitry. The crowd's roar bled through, deep and rumbling, like the ocean pressing against the hull of a sinking ship. I caught glimpses through the cracks, flashes of banners, reptilian faces painted in war colors, weapons raised high in anticipation. My escort didn't speak, but I knew what they were thinking. This was the human, the Death Worlder, the one they'd been told was special. Yet as they looked me over, lanky frame, one arm still wrapped in a healing brace, I could taste their disappointment. They'd been promised a beast. They'd gotten a man. The arena master was waiting, tall, insectoid, her exoskeleton gleaming with gold inlays. 2 sets of arms folded across her thorax, a ceremonial whip hanging at her side. She regarded me the way a surgeon might study a corpse before making the first cut. "You are Marcus Hale of Earth," she said in a voice like crushed glass. "They tell me you are the last of your unit." I met her eyes. "They're wrong," I said. "I'm the first." That made her mandibles twitch. Amusement, maybe, or annoyance. Either way, she signaled, and the gates began to rise. Light flooded in, harsh and hot, revealing a killing ground littered with weapons. I stepped forward, the chains falling away, and I realized for the first time since I'd been captured that the smell in the air wasn't just rust and brine. It was blood. The sand crunched under my boots as I stepped into the killing ring. It was pale gold, scattered with dark stains, centuries of them. Above me, the stands stretched into the sky, tier upon tier packed with thousands of aliens from a dozen species, their voices merging into a single throbbing heartbeat of noise. I took in the layout as fast as I could. 8 weapon racks positioned, in a loose circle, each containing a random assortment of blades, spears, shock mauls, and energy staves. In the center, a raised platform, good for visibility, bad for cover. 4 gates ringed the arena's walls, their barred mouths hiding whatever horrors would be released first. A loud chime rang out, sharp and metallic. The gates opened. The first opponent was a Kharid brute, towering twice my height, muscles-like. Twisted cables under scaly black skin. His 4 arms each gripped a curved blade, the edges glowing faintly with heat. His eyes locked on me immediately, dismissing the other competitors. I didn't move. "Let him come." The brute charged, sand exploding under his feet. I sidestepped, barely, feeling the heat of his blade pass an inch from my ribs. My hand shot out, grabbing the haft of a discarded spear from the ground. Not to fight, to throw. It wasn't aimed at him, but at the nearest weapon rack. The rack tipped, spilling weapons in his path. He stumbled, momentum carrying him too far. That was my moment. I darted forward, grabbed one of his own dropped blades, and slammed it into the unarmored seam beneath his shoulder. He roared, a sound like steel tearing, and collapsed, blood sizzling on the sand. The crowd's roar shifted, not derision this time. Curiosity. I straightened, meeting their gaze. Not so weak now, am I? The next wave came fast, too fast. No recovery time. 4 more fighters emerged, each from a different gate, each alien in shape and movement. There was a Veshin stalker, low and sleek, its quadrupedal frame bristling with barbed quills. A Selvar duelist, skin patterned like molten bronze, wielding a pair of whistling chain blades. An Oriv war priest in ceremonial armor, chanting under his breath as if each word was a curse meant for me. And lastly, a human. Or what was left of one. The sight stopped me cold. His armor was in tatters, his face gaunt, eyes sunken and hollow. I didn't know his name, but the way he moved, slow, mechanical, told me everything. Mind broken, conditioned for the kill. The crowd loved it. I didn't. The stalker struck. First, a blur of motion across the sand. I dropped into a roll, coming up behind the duelist, using his body as a shield. The stalker's quills embedded themselves in the duelist's chest, the chainsword wielder screaming as his own partner took him down. The war priest bellowed something in his guttural tongue and charged, hammer raised. I sidestepped, caught the haft mid-swing and twisted, using his momentum to hurl him straight into the human. The impact jarred the man's eyes open, recognition flickering for just an instant before the war priest crushed him beneath steel. I ended the priest with a single thrust. The human didn't move again. When the gates closed, I was the only one, still standing. The sand was a mess of blood and broken weapons. My breathing was steady now, each inhale sharp in my chest, each exhale tasting faintly of copper. The arena master entered, her mandibles clicking in a rhythm that sounded approving. "You were not expected to survive the first hour," she said. "The odds were 20-1 against you." "Good," I replied. "Let's make them worse." That made her eyes glitter. "Very well. Tomorrow you face the Catharian." The crowd reacted instantly, a wave of murmurs, excitement, even fear. I didn't know what a Catharian was, but the way they said it made my skin crawl. The arena master gestured and guards closed in. Back in my cell, I studied the wounds on my arm. Shallow cuts. Nothing deep. The bruises would heal. The ache in my ribs was worse, a reminder of the brute's near miss. But pain was good. Pain meant I was still alive. Somewhere above me, the city sang its alien songs echoing down the stone corridors. Somewhere far beyond, Earth was just a memory. But here, in this pit, they'd called me weak. Tomorrow, they'd learn what that mistake would cost them. The cell door opened before dawn. 2 guards, reptilian, broad-shouldered, and reeking of spiced oil, pulled me from the bench. They didn't bother with chains this time. Either they trusted I wouldn't try to run, or they wanted me to think I had a chance. The walk to the arena was longer than before. The corridors bent and twisted, occasionally opening into high balconies where alien nobles watched me pass. Their expressions were carved masks, unreadable, yet hungry. Somewhere above, an artificial sun rose, flooding the city in a harsh, clinical light. When we reached the staging gate, the air was different, thicker, charged, like a storm was waiting just out of sight. The arena floor was empty except for one massive set of steel doors at the far end, their edges glowing faintly with containment fields. The crowd's noise was not the same roar as before. It was lower, expectant. The arena master's voice carried, easily over the hush. "The Catharian," she declared, "has not been defeated in 87 cycles. Today, a Death Worlder will try." The steel doors split. It emerged slowly, as though the weight of its own body was an effort. 8 feet tall, covered in segmented armor plates that shimmered with iridescent colors. Its arms, 2 primary, 2 smaller and hooked, ended in clawed hands. Its face was a single mask of bone with 6 black eyes, each moving independently. The creature tilted its head. The air around it shimmered with heat. I exhaled once. So this is the legend. The Catharian moved faster than anything. That size should. One moment it was 50 feet away, the next its claws were raking across the sand where I'd stood an instant before. I didn't try to match its speed. I let it chase. Every step, I kept my distance, eyes scanning for patterns. It didn't lunge. Blindly. It anticipated. My feints were countered before I fully committed. This wasn't a beast. This was a tactician. It swung one of its secondary arms low, hooking my leg. I hit the sand, rolling away as its primary claws dug deep furrows where my spine had been. Pain flared in my shoulder, the joint wrenched from the fall. I bit it down. Weapon racks were scattered farther than I liked. I made for the nearest one, but the Catherion herded me away, always between me and the tools I needed. Fine. No weapons then. When it lunged again, I dove toward its legs, driving both feet into the joint where the armor segmented. The impact jarred my bones, but the monster staggered just enough. I rolled behind it, hooked my good arm around one of its secondary limbs, and twisted until I heard the pop of tearing muscle. It howled. The sound rattled the stands. The crowd loved it. The Catherion was injured now, but not slowed. It adapted instantly, switching to a lower stance, claws sweeping in arcs designed to deny me any close approach. I circled, feet sinking into the hot sand. Each step I took was deliberate, forcing it to keep turning, forcing those black eyes to track me all at once. I wanted it burning energy. It lunged again, but this time I didn't dodge. I stepped inside the arc, felt the wind of its claws against my cheek, and drove my shoulder into its chest. My hands found the latch points between its armor plates, fingers digging until I felt something soft. It jerked back, but not before I ripped free a bundle of sinewy fibers. Blood sprayed, thick and dark, hissing where it hit the sand. That was my opening. I dove for a fallen weapon, a glaive-like blade with a serrated edge, and swung it in a vicious upward arc. The blade caught in its chest armor, cutting through to the bone mask. It reeled, staggering toward the arena wall. I advanced, glaive ready for the final strike. Then it dropped the act. It came at me in a blur, all four arms slashing, moving with a speed that made the first exchange feel lazy. I barely got the glaive up before its claws tore it from my hands. We were back to nothing but fists and teeth. The Catherion pressed hard, forcing me against the wall. Each blow shook the arena floor, each strike meant to break bones whether it landed clean or not. I ducked low, feinted left, then drove my knee into its injured joint again. It faltered. Not much, but enough for me to dive past it. My hand closed around something in the sand, the haft of a broken spear. I turned as it charged, raising the spear like a quarterstaff. When it struck, I used its own momentum, catching the blow and letting the force spin me sideways. The broken spear's jagged end slid under its arm, deep into the soft gap I'd found earlier. The Catherion froze. 6 black eyes locked on mine. It tried to lift me, maybe to break me over its knee, but my grip on the spear only tightened, twisting until I felt the give of tissue tearing. Its roar turned into a wet gurgle, and then it collapsed. The crowd erupted, the sound hitting me like a wall. I stood over the body, chest heaving, every muscle screaming. The arena master entered, eyes fixed on me with something between respect and hunger. "You've done what no one has," she said. "You've broken the strongest." I spat blood into the sand. "Then send me someone stronger." The crowd's roar doubled. Above us, banners unfurled. And somewhere in the shadows of the highest tier, I knew they were already deciding what to do with me next. They didn't let me rest long. My cell was replaced with a larger chamber, this one furnished with food, water, and even a cot that wasn't made of stone. Comfort was just another kind of chain. Through the bars, I could see them watching. Not the common spectators, but the handlers, each from a different species, each with their own warriors under training. I wasn't a prisoner anymore. I was an investment. Days passed in cycles of training and interrogation. They tested my reactions, pushed my endurance past breaking, measured my heartbeat during simulated duels. They weren't just curious about my strength. They wanted to know why a fragile death worlder had beaten their champion. When they finally told me what came next, I almost laughed. Not a single opponent this time, Not two, but a trial, a series of fights in different environments, each one tailored to break a fighter in a unique way. My handler, a gaunt, insectoid alien with translucent skin, whispered as they strapped the armor to my chest. "They will expect you to fight like before. Do not." I nodded. Adaptation had kept humans alive long before we'd left Earth. Out here, it would have to keep me alive again. The first trial was in the desert pit. The sand here wasn't soft. It was sharp, cutting into any exposed skin. The heat shimmered, warping the air into waves. Across from me stood a pair of lithe, bird-like fighters, wielding curved blades that caught the sun like mirrors. They moved in perfect coordination, each attack setting up the other. I didn't try to overpower them. Instead, I let them drive me back, keeping my steps slow, deliberate, letting the sand cut deeper into their lighter feet. Every few breaths, I threw in a sudden burst of movement, forcing them to sprint, to push their wings for balance. In this heat, that kind of energy burned fast. When one faltered, I closed in, sweeping its legs from under it and driving my elbow into the joint where its wing met its shoulder. Bone snapped. The other came at me in a blur of rage. I sidestepped, caught its arm, and used its own momentum to send it crashing into the jagged arena wall. The fight was over before it hit the ground. The announcer's voice carried over the desert wind. "The Death Worlder endures." I didn't hear the cheers. My eyes were already on the gate to the next trial. The second trial was the flood chamber. Waist-deep water churned in a circular pit, lit only by bioluminescent algae clinging to the walls. Somewhere beneath the surface, something moved. Two shapes rose from the depths, long, eel-like predators with segmented jaws and spiny fins. They circled me without making a sound, only the faint ripple of water betraying their position. In the shallows, they struck. Teeth, like glass shards, raked my forearm as I blocked. I grabbed the nearest spine on its back, twisting until it thrashed, and rolled. The other lunged for my legs, but I pushed down, forcing the first one between us as a shield, its partner's bite locked into its side. I took the chance to dive, driving both my knees into its gills. Water exploded upward in a froth of blood and algae. I surfaced, lungs burning, in time to see the first predator limp toward the deeper pool. I didn't let it escape, not because the crowd demanded it, but because leaving it alive meant a return strike later. When the gates opened, I was soaked, bleeding and smiling. The next trial would be worse. That was the point. The final trial was in the Forge Arena, a massive circular platform surrounded by molten metal streams. The air shimmered with heat, and every breath tasted like burning iron. 4 opponents waited for me here, each from a different species I'd seen in the viewing balconies. This wasn't about testing me anymore. This was the showcase. Win here, and I wasn't just a champion. I was a legend. They came from all angles. I dropped low, letting the nearest one, a hulking, armored brute, overshoot, then drove both hands into the back of its knee. It went down, screaming. The second, a spindly, 4-armed creature, tried to wrap me in steel cables. I grabbed. The cable yanked hard and sent it tumbling into the molten stream. The smell was something I'll never forget. The third had a blade, long and thin. I took it from them in a single motion and buried it in the fourth's chest before they could reach me. The brute rose again, wounded but raging. I stepped in close, forehead to its jaw, and whispered so only it could hear. They called me weak. Then I broke its neck. The Forge Arena went silent for a heartbeat before the roar came, a wall of sound that shook the molten rivers themselves. I stood alone, surrounded by the fallen, and knew the truth. The Death Worlder had outlived them all.